So, there's a question I've been pondering for a while, and it has to do with why scam artists scam artists. Or rather, why are there so many scams targeted at artists? It seems to me that if I were a more nefarious person and I was looking for a robust and affluent industry that was constantly moving large amounts of money around that I could siphon off like a parasite, I probably wouldn't think of the art industry. It probably wouldn't be my first choice. It probably wouldn't be my second choice. Actually, it probably wouldn't even come close to the top 10 on that list. And yet, every corner of every creative industry seems to be rife with some sort of fraud, scams, or other predatory bad business practices. And that is to say that there seems to be an increase in scams across all industries, not just the creative ones, especially in recent years as the ways that people have formed connections and networked through social media have changed, and not all for the better. Now, luckily, there are a fair few who are putting in the hard work into calling out and exposing these scams and fraudulent activities. And while that is the case, I want to take the time to explore why creatives are so frequently targeted. And while this isn't meant to be some sort of exhaustive list of the sort of scams that are out there, it's something that I hope will raise your awareness to the sort of bad practices that seek to take advantage of artists. In the meantime, I'll be going through the process of creating a little fantasy artwork, which I'll be drawing and later painting up with some watercolors. And if the subject matter of a little gnomish character fending off a pack of ravenous wolves lost in the wilderness in any way seems analogous to what we're talking about, in all honesty, it's just what I enjoy creating. So, with all of that out of the way, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Now let's get into why scam artists scam artists. If there's one thing that all the scams targeting artists have in common, it's that they have some sort of appeal to one's sense of creative validation. Now you might be thinking, wouldn't the one thing all scams have in common be money and the forfeiture of said money? Well, that's not always the case, especially in scams targeted at artists, as seen in the number of people who still get roped into this sort of work for exposure scheme where no monetary compensation is ever offered or expected in many instances. Rather, the one thing that all of these scams seem to have in common is their bait of offering creative validation to ensnare the artists that they are seeking to extract some value from. And by value, this could be anything from extracting personal information, money, or making use of their creative services and then not providing any sort of adequate compensation in return, literally stealing the value of an artistic work. Because of the very broad and open concept of the art industry, and the fact that it is always changing very rapidly with the times, this leaves a lot of opportunities for potential bad actors to wiggle in and take advantage of people. Because of this, the artists who are most vulnerable to these practices are the beginner artists, the students, or those who have small or modest amount of representation on social media. Those who are also frequently targeted are artists in other countries, especially those that are farther outside the scope of the Western world, whose scammers are hoping are ignorant to the scheme that they're trying to conduct, or to how business is properly conducted abroad. And the sort of scams that are out there have been constantly growing and changing their tactics, especially post-2020. While I was working as a freelance 3D artist, I maintained a portfolio on the website ArtStation. I can remember that the scam that I encountered with tremendous frequency around this time was the fake job offer phishing email scam that was hitting everyone who had a professional email link on their ArtStation account at this time. This scam was highly prevalent across the website at this time, with many artists calling attention to it in blog posts, and even the people who manage ArtStation wrote an article to make people aware of this fraudulent activity. In this article, they write that criminals have been changing their methods with current events as an opportunity to target artists with fake job offers from studios that would be a dream job. The criminals hide their identities behind fake names, fake studio emails, and fake Telegram accounts to fool artists into believing that they have been offered a real job. Thankfully, all these details can be easily checked with a quick online search. The article also went on to show an example of one of these fraudulent job offers, which only proved that despite being called a scam artist, they have a definite lack of creativity, as every single phishing email that I received followed the exact same format. The emails were always claiming to be from some big, highly recognizable AAA studio, with some basic copied and pasted information, usually taken from other real job offers. They were always for a 2D and 3D artist position, with some fairly vague and nebulous requirements that were essentially a catch-all for anyone who was on the ArtStation website. And they always claimed to be offering an actually unbelievable amount of benefits and an hourly rate that is honestly absurd in comparison to any starting position at any studio anywhere. And in every email, they concluded by telling you to contact them ASAP via Telegram, where they would no doubt proceed to just harvest all the personal information that they wanted from you. Now, if you didn't pick up any of the contextual clues in the body of the email, you could of course do a cursory search of the supposed recruiter's name on LinkedIn to absolutely zero results. But my personal favorite way to instantly dispel this was to just look at the sender's email address, which was usually something like retrostudios@gmail, or my personal favorite, blizzardactivision@yahoo. Seems legit. And while it should be obvious to me and you the sort of scam that was trying to be pulled here, it certainly wasn't unforeseeable given what was going on at the time with the massive amount of people who were transferring from in-person work to remote work and the numbers of people who were being let go, especially those who were in freelance and contract positions. I was actually one of them, but I was lucky enough to have other work to fall back on. I can only imagine that those who were in a more difficult position than I was might feel a sense of desperation to believe that this was a real job offer. In my case, I ultimately ended up just removing my email address from my ArtStation account. This was because after a few instances of receiving an email that said job offer in the title, what would have initially been a sense of excitement quickly devolved into a sense of cynicism. Likewise, this scam fits into the model of trying to bait artists through creative validation. Even the article on ArtStation made mention that many of these emails claim to be from people representing the sort of AAA studio dream jobs that many of the people on their platform aspire to work for. But as I said before, there are a lot of scams out there in every creative niche, and this is just one personal example of my own. So if you're an artist or a creative of any sort, what should you do so that you can better navigate the world out there and make sure that you don't fall victim to any of these traps? If you're a beginner artist, your main focus should be on your work. Learn, improve, and make real connections with people. Regardless of whether you're networking in person or online, focus on forming genuine connections with people. This will set a precedence for them to do the same with you and will help you to be better able to spot those who are being disingenuine. I know this sounds a little vague and nebulous, but do it long enough and you'll form a bit of a spidey sense for when there's danger or something sounds too good to be true. But regardless of your impressions of the matter, you're going to have to do your research. This goes for full-time, freelance, contract, and commission work. This isn't going to become any less important as time goes on. Do your research about who you're working with well in advance to working with anyone. You should also have some very solid terms settled in an upfront agreement as to how the work is going to be conducted. This is especially true for any freelance, contract, or commission work. There are many instances where beginner artists will avoid doing this because they don't want to seem like they're being hostile or argumentative towards a potential client. But that's not the case. You're being professional and you're making sure that you don't get taken advantage of. Some of the things that you might want to settle early on are getting a portion of the commission costs as an upfront deposit, or getting a written agreement as to exactly how the artwork is going to be used or published. Speaking of agreements, read all the paperwork thoroughly. Those with significant experience working on larger projects will even at times consult legal counsel to go through all the paperwork with a fine-tooth comb and recommend any changes or addendums that might need to be made. Let's just say there's a precedence to be cautious and always know what you're agreeing to. As for a few things that you're probably better off just outright avoiding, the first is gig work sites. These are things like Fiverr, Upwork, etc. These sites are usually a very predatory race to the bottom to undercut everyone else for the bottom rung of clients who really don't value your creative input in the first place. However, I really don't see these sort of sites being a big issue in the future, and I really haven't heard much about artists using them anymore, probably as the widespread use of AI creations has largely diminished the client base that would have otherwise been seeking to recruit an artist through these sites. The next thing that I'll say you're probably better off avoiding is clearly going to be the NFT space. It's pretty broadly known at this point that the vast amount of scam artists and other bad actors associated with the cryptocurrency sphere easily overshadows the few good creations and positive outcomes that come from this space. And I don't hate NFTs. On paper, it sounds like a cool concept that could be highly profitable for artists. And I even know a few creators who have had some very positive outcomes in this venue. However unfortunate, it is readily apparent that the vast majority of people in the NFT space only care about profiteering and give little to no regard for creative integrity or ethical conduct. Another thing that you should avoid that I made mention of earlier, but most artists probably already know about, is the idea of working for free or work for exposure. Work for exposure schemes often entail doing artwork for someone on a project that has very little to no guarantee of any monetary compensation. Usually the only compensation that is being offered is that the artist's work will be published or gain greater exposure simply by being associated with whatever project is being worked on. This is an all-around bad idea because it devalues the artwork that you're creating, and usually the people who are trying to recruit an artist for these means don't even have the capability of delivering on the promise of exposure to begin with. But this is pretty common knowledge across the art community, to where it's pretty much a bit of a meme at this point. Another thing that I'll add, which might sound a little bit broad, is to simply be diligent when dealing with any sort of middlemen in general. And by middlemen, this is essentially anyone you network with in the art industry who claims to be able to expand your creative agency. A few legitimate examples of creative middlemen would be people like gallery owners or publishing agencies, sort of people that you can work with who will help to expand your creative brand. However, it's good to be cautious, especially across the digital landscape, of anyone who claims they have the magic solution to get your work seen by the right people. In all honesty, a lot of that sort of work is entirely within your own capability. So if you're listening to this video, or you've seen any of the other numerous videos out there that talk about scams targeting artists, and you're getting a bit discouraged, feeling like the entire industry is just filled with people who are trying to defraud you or trick you with some deceitful practice, I'm here to tell you it's really not all that, and you really shouldn't be getting discouraged. Social media does its part in raising awareness to these sort of things, but it can also make it seem like these things are entirely all-encompassing. And that's really not the case. There are probably more creative opportunities now for artists than there have been at any other point in history. Creative industries are constantly changing, and they're changing rapidly. The key to longevity is to find the right balance between adaptability and staying true to your own creative vision. Finding this balance is not easy, but it is rewarding, and it's a learning process that takes hard work, dedication, and, at the risk of sounding redundant at this point, getting creative. So you have every reason to continue putting in the hard work into your craft and getting creative. But I would love to hear what others have to say about this as well, so leave a comment below as to what your experience has been in your own creative field. And if you've watched the video this far, or you've just been listening to me ramble, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. It would also be helpful if you took the time to like the video and consider subscribing, because I'm going to have new videos coming out and other creations that I'm working on. And YouTube's really the best way to keep track of all that. So, get to work on your own creative projects, have fun, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.